Welcome to Better Than I Found It. I'm Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor. Today I'll be catching up with former Titleist Player Promotions representative Jim Ahearn. For right at 35 years, Jim defined and then redefined his role with the company. He was a virtual pioneer in this profession. You'll learn today some very interesting history in his profession and also with the NCAA Golf Championship that he attended so many times. He and I also touch on a sense of entitlement that is prevalent in the world of junior golf, amateur golf, and college golf, both players and coaches, so this is not just players. He also lets us know what he's up to in his retirement. Really enjoyed this podcast today. Please welcome my very dear friend, Jim Ahearn. My guest today on Better Than I Found It podcast is Jim Ahearn. Jim Ahearn, longtime Acushnet company representative. And Jim, I've been wanting to catch up with you for about 6 months since you left College Golf World, and I know a lot of other people have been. So I'm excited to have you here today.
Well, Mike, it's good to have this chat with you. I'd be lying to say that I don't miss you and all the other coaches and parents and officials, NCAA, USGA. So it's just great to catch up. It has been 6 months, but it feels like it's been longer. So let's get after it.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, a lot of people know who you are. And so for some of those that don't really know your background, let's talk a little bit about how you got to the Acushnet company and how we're going to talk about your place in the golf industry as we go through, but just kind of how did you get to Acushnet to begin with?
Well, I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, played, junior and amateur golf throughout Northern California, attended junior college, the College of San Mateo for 2 years before transferring down to San Diego State. I transferred down in January of 1974, and at that time, San Diego State hosted the NCAA championships at Carlton Oaks. And ironically, given where I ended up landing vocationally, this was my first exposure to Division I, the NCAA Division I national championships, and my first encounter with the likes of Dave Williams, Jesse Haddock, Mike Holder, and Carl Tucker. So there must have been good karma in all that. I was unfortunately not able to further my golf career due to a left injury, so I focused on my education. I also started working at a golf course and got in the PGA apprentice program. Spent 6.5 years as a golf professional in San Diego. 2.5 of those years was spent at La Costa Country Club and Spa, where I worked for Tommy Jacobs and where I earned my Junior A status with the PGA of America. During that 6.5 years, about the last year and a half, I was elected to the board of directors of the San Diego chapter of the Southern California section. In July of 1981, I started my career with Titleist at the club plant in Escondido, California. About 6 months later, I got transferred to the East Coast, but had to interview with Wally Uline before making the move back east. And during the interview process, Wally asked me what my vocational career goal was, and I told him, I says, I wanted to be president of Titleist. Little did I know at that point in time, I was talking to the guy that was the future president, chairman and CEO of Titleist.
Perfect definition of irony right there, wouldn't it?
Yes, it was. But once I got back to the East Coast, my initial responsibilities were as an inside sales rep and home pro staff coordinator, which I took care of all the order administration for all of our staff members' personal use orders. Did that for about three plus years. And in 1984, Wally had been starting to groom me to take over the Titleist's college and amateur promotions. And what few people know was that Joe Ternessa, Wally Uline, Gary Hart from Ping, and Joe Phillips from Wilson were the founders of what we know the industry's college promotional efforts we know today. And they had the foresight to see the benefits of aligning themselves with the top college programs in the country, because they were pushing players to the PGA Tour. And this all took place in the late 70s and early 80s. And at the 1984 National Championships at Bear Creek Golf World in Houston, Wally passed the baton to me to take over the administration of our college and amateur programs at that point in time. I was still had responsibilities internally with the home pro staff program, and it wasn't until 1989 that I really was 24/7 all in on the college and amateur promotions, as I went into the player promotion department full time. During that run up to 1990, Wally was a great mentor and allowed me to grow in the position and put my own fingerprints on the position. But he made a couple of things very clear. He had three objectives or goals. One was to protect the ball count. Two was to identify the feeder systems to the PGA Tour. And three, to identify and develop relationships with the rising stars of the next generation. And one of the ways I was able to do this was I developed a ranking system for the company that allowed me to track and identify the rising stars in junior golf, college golf / amateur golf, and also the mini tours. Those were really, at that point in time, the three main feeder systems to the PGA Tour. So the game has been growing for years and years and years, and identifying the next generation, the rising stars of the next generation, really took a global approach. And that was part and parcel to the number of international players that were coming to the U.S. to play not only college golf, but junior golf and amateur golf. Subsequently, I started traveling more. My travels included, obviously, major junior, amateur, and college events, evaluating players and taking equipment counts. But it also expanded overseas, where I would go where the world gathered to key international amateur tournaments: the British Amateur, the European Amateur, the European Boys Team Championships, the Australian Team Championships, the Australian Amateur, New Zealand Amateur, the World Amateurs in various parts of the world. Looking back, I traveled to 23 countries, which I would have never thought I'd travel to in my lifetime. But I met a lot of great people and just had a lot of great experiences. But along the way, I found myself looking over my shoulders, be it domestically. I'd see coaches showing up at the same junior golf tournaments I was at. I saw agents at the same college and amateur tournaments that I was at. And as Wally said, it was no secret that they were paying attention to what we, Titleist, was doing, as it was identifying the rising stars of the next generation. Those coaches that followed my lead and traveled to international tournaments, it was I look back and it was kind of funny. My first trip overseas to the European Boys Team Championship was to Helsinki, Finland, and three coaches were there with me. Eric Hoos, who was the then golf coach at Denver, Fred Warren at East Tennessee State, Randy Line, and myself. And then the last European Boys Team Championship I attended was in Sweden, and there was 25 plus coaches there. And that was the year John Rahm had his breakout moment and got on the radar of a lot of college coaches. And John's true character came out that week, because the tournament format had you do 36 holes of qualifying, so you could put the teams in either the championship flight or the second or third flight. And John was low qualifier. He signed his scorecard going to the practice tee or just getting his golf clubs, looked in his golf bag and realized he had 15 clubs in his bag, and reported it to the scoring area and was disqualified. But fortunately enough, it did not hurt Spain from playing in the championship flight. So just one of the little sound bites of the travels overseas. But, the position evolved over the years, part and parcel to the growth of the game, the number of international players, and it made the identification of the rising stars a little bit more complicated. But the ranking system that I had developed for the company was really allowing me to know where to target my travel efforts and our resources, being, the product support. And this is before Mac Fair brought on the Junior Golf Scoreboard, and Golf Week had their rankings, and and the scratch players really wasn't touching junior golf. But I had that. We used it effectively, and it really helped me. But at the end of the day, one of the secrets to my longevity in the job, which was, 30 plus years, was that I continued to reinvent myself on a regular basis. And as the landscape changed, I couldn't do the job if I wasn't open to change, wasn't open to be flexible in what I did and how I did. And that was really the secret to the longevity over the years, especially as we got into the, post 2010, when the competitive activity really started ramping up. And then once TaylorMade took over the national sponsorship of the AJGA. But that's kind of the cliff notes of where I came from, how I got there. And
that's certainly a history that really hasn't ever been told. Honestly, it hasn't. And it gives everybody just a little bit better idea of coming from basically nothing to all of a sudden now you've got every major manufacturer chasing junior golf tournaments, amateur golf tournaments, college golf tournaments all around the world, just to try to identify players then that they would sponsor and or have play their equipment as professionals. But that brings up something I really want to talk to you about that I think is really a part of our world and probably touches on human nature about as much as anything, and that is entitlement. Because while you were identifying these players, you also were trying to attract them to play the Titleist golf ball and Acushnet clubs, Titleist clubs. So with that comes a sense of entitlement for junior golfers, college golfers, and college coaches, if you will. So let's kind of delve into that, because I think it's a very real thing.
No, there's no doubt. And let's put a little bit of a timeline to this, if you will. As we all know, the rules on amateur status changed, and the USGA and RNA in 2002 implemented changes to the rules of amateur status, where it was okay for amateurs to receive free equipment from a manufacturer, provided the amateur did not participate in any advertising or promotion of those products for the company. And, from our perspective, we were kind of going into an unknown world. If I can use a recruiting analogy, what was it, July 1st, during the early years of recruiting, you could start making contact with juniors.
Yes, you could have 3 off-campus contacts, and you could start phone calls once a week at that time.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I'm going to get a phone call or a text at 12:01. Can I get free equipment? That didn't happen. It was really a slow rollout of this whole thing. But one of the things that disappointed me is that the USGA and RNA had no limits on the amount of equipment an amateur could receive. And they told us, we're going to leave that up to the manufacturer. But as we know, this was a game changer for parents, kids, college coaches, as their sense of entitlement slowly began to change and develop. I don't think any manufacturer at that point in time knew what to expect. And from my perspective, there were two schools of thought by manufacturers. And they either took a rifle shot approach to this change in amateur status and provided product support on a performance-based basis, or it was a carpet bombing approach where anyone who asked could receive product. I know which bucket I fell in. I knew which bucket Ping fell in. I didn't know what buckets some of the other manufacturers fell into. But at the end of the day, as here we are at 2020 and looking at what's taken place over the years, the sense of entitlement is very concerning to me, because the focus is not on playing the game. It's shifted to how much free product I can receive, or how much free product my child can receive, or how much free product as a college golf coach, can receive from a manufacturer. And it's not about putting your child or your team in a position to play their best golf. It's about the product and how much they can get in a college coach's case, defer that equipment expense. And I just I'm old school, and I've always had a hard time. I've just wrestled with it over the years. But at the end of the day, as you know, that we have a business to run. You guys have a business to run. You have budgets, but we just can't. We've never tried to be everything, everybody. So we had to, yes, manage the expectations of parent, child, college golfer, or college coach. And one of the challenges you have in doing so is that you find yourself having to say no to someone and trying to put a positive spin on it. And that's where we felt as a company, and I still do to this day, that the fairest way to go about the distribution of the product that you have available to you is on a performance-based basis. And therefore, at the end of the day, you could look a parent and child in the eye and tell them, it says, look, it's a performance-based product support system, and your child needs to get to here. And if he gets to here, the opportunity will present itself. We'll go through some more further discussions as to what our expectations are of you and your child. And if you're comfortable with those sort of expectations, we can move forward. I know I went to bed at night sleeping very comfortably, having that conversation with a parent or a coach or a child, knowing that if he goes and talks to his best friend and everything else, those people have heard the same conversation. So we were not flying by the seat of our pants and all this.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I remember we had a young player when I was at Oklahoma State who was a really good junior player, and he came into college. So he got a lot of equipment and balls and everything in college, in junior golf. And then in college, because he was at Oklahoma State, he got some of that too. And he came to me after he graduated and said, hey, I'm having a little trouble getting balls and gloves. Can you help me out with that? And I said, well, I think the company, will give you balls and gloves as you perform better. That's what's going to happen. I can't just make a phone call to get you balls and gloves as a professional. And he was kind of shocked by that. And that was the first time I had seen true entitlement, because he felt like, well, I always got them before. Surely I get them now. And that was kind of a shocker to me. And then I saw it more and more. But I also look for, when I hand out something to a player, I love it when he looks me straight in the eye and says, thanks, coach. I appreciate that. Because then he still appreciates it, even though I'm giving him something that he was going to get anyway, but he's thankful for it. So I want to work back away from entitlement.
Well, I think we all would, and I hate to say it, but thank you is not in the dictionary or vocabulary of many young golfers right now. They expect, you know, they expect free equipment, and if Titleist didn't give it to them, then they're going to go to another manufacturer and request it from them, and they may even go to another manufacturer and request product from them and compare notes and play whatever the equipment they want. Correct me if I'm wrong in my assessment of this entitlement issue. Is there's no accountability on the players or parents or coaches part as to what equipment's in play, and myself or Titleist and other manufacturers find ourselves sending equipment in, and we never hear anything back from the player or the coach as to why it is not in play. I think part of the onus falls on us as manufacturers, but it also falls on in the hands of the player and coach and even parents. That human nature will tell you that they want to avoid conflict, and the last thing they want to, you've seen it, that we provide, or a player is providing equipment to a manufacturer and he's not playing it, and he runs into the manufacturer at a college golf tournament, an amateur golf tournament, and he beelines it and starts walking away from the manufacturer. That has to change in my mind. You can text, you can email a manufacturer and let them know what's going on with the equipment, and it makes that one-on-one personal encounter a lot easier versus not saying anything at all. But I heard, before I retired, I heard a scenario where there were junior golfers that were getting upset that they are getting pressure to play certain equipment from one of the leading golf manufacturers, and they weren't asking for it, but they were getting pressure to put the equipment in play. And that's not what this whole thing should be about. But it's
honestly,
concerning.
This whole thing should be about each player playing their best golf. That's what it should be about.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's playing the game and the player or individual or even team playing their best golf is not the first priority. It's gimme, what can I get for free? And Lord knows where some of this equipment ends up. I like to think that players have enough integrity that they're not selling some of this equipment on the internet. That would be very concerning to me. So,
well, I think that as you said, human nature a minute ago, I think human nature is to get as much as you can for yourself. And so I don't know where you draw the line or what the answer is, but I do know that that all of us should seek out being the best we can be at whatever we're doing. And I'm not going to be the best just because I have the most drivers, or I'm not going to be the best because I've got more great looking putters than you do. I'm going to be the best because I shoot a lower score. So if people get back to that, and if you play well, there's manufacturers standing in line to give you their equipment and pay you, and they want you using their product if you play well enough. I'd rather play well than just get a bunch of good stuff.
No, but I completely agree. At the end of the day, one of the best comments I ever heard was when I made a visit out to the PGA Tour, and one of the better players at that time, I can't remember who it was, but he was talking about all the equipment trailers out there on tour week in and week out. And it says the best players figure out what works for them, and they don't make a lot of change. That still holds true today. Look at what equipment Brooks Koepka is playing. He's not being paid by anybody. He's playing the driver and the irons and the ball that he wants to play. And I think you may see more of that out on tour in the future. It may be wishful thinking in some people's minds, but most of the money you're going to win out on tour is on the golf course, not off the golf course.
Well, let's hope that one day that gets turned back around. It's too bad it didn't get changed before you finished your career in that, but it is part of life.
Well,
It's part of that world.
Well, some people accuse me of trying to cure cancer by changing that mindset, but over time, I think people will begin to realize the downside of just taking more and more and more equipment. It's not healthy for the game, and it's not healthy for the future players coming up through the game, because it's painting an unrealistic picture of what they have to look forward to going as they move up the competitive ladder of golf.
Exactly. I agree. Well, speaking of wanting to change things, or the fact is, you were a fixture in college and amateur and junior golf for well over 30 years, and everybody knew you when they saw you, and wanted to go shake your hand, say hello. So we missed that part. But what I want to do right now is just ask you, let's talk about some of the main changes you saw in college golf during your time. I've been in it for about 25 years, and I've seen quite a few changes. So give me 2 or 3 of the most influential or important changes you've seen in the game.
Well, I don't know that I could hold it to 2 or 3. I'll start by saying the quality of the players over the years has improved dramatically, part and parcel to more playing opportunities kids have in junior golf. And second, the influx of international players in the both the men's and women's game in college golf has been significant. Subsequently, there's more parity among the D1 teams. You know, back in 1974, there may have been 10 prominent teams in college golf. Now I could go so far as say that there's 30 or 40 prominent D1 teams in college right now. Regional championships were introduced, which was now the qualifier for the NCAA championships. I laugh a little bit because that's where I always saw coaches have out-of-body experiences because the tension got so high.
I tell you what, professional golfers hate tour school. They just hate it. It's a terrible week. You know, there's only 2 outcomes, and one of them's really bad. And I felt a little bit like that at regionals. I wasn't a fan back in the days when I was under a little more pressure.
Yeah, and then you had to move to match play in 2009, which was a significant change, and that was due part and parcel to bring TV into the college environment. The Golf Channel has brought more attention to the college game and the individuals. Steve Barkowski and company have done a fabulous job. They're doing more, and it only helps college golf. The other thing that probably doesn't come to mind for many is just the changing of the guard in the coaching community. The likes of, Mike Holder is now retired, but, Jesse Haddock is gone, Dave Williams is gone, Carl Tucker is gone, and a lot of the veteran coaches that used to be part of the game, Jay Hardwick, Bill Brogdon, Fred Warren, they've retired. And now you've got a whole new breed of college coaches, many of which played college golf themselves. Mm-hmm. And they're bringing a lot to the game and to how coaches coach up their players, which I that's where I see a big change. That you guys, you're walking maybe 9 holes with a player during a tournament and peel back and work with somebody else, but you're helping them learn how to manage themselves around a golf course and making good decisions. College golf recruiting has changed. Now you have 2 coaches out there recruiting, and you have 2 coaches coaching at events. All positive for the game. And two things more recently, you had the advent of this year PGA University, where I have to applaud the PGA Tour and those coaches who were involved in making this program happen. It now gives a defined pathway for the elite college players to get on Korn Ferry or Latin America or the Mackenzie Tour. You didn't have that back in the 80s or 90s. Just very, very positive. And then you have, you've got a challenge ahead of you, which is navigating the name, likeness, and image proposals that are in front of the NCAA and in front of a lot of the state's legislatures. So that's a whole new kettle of fish from where I sit. But at the end of the day, college golf has changed in another way. We lost a number of years ago the one individual that was the first champion of college golf, and that was Ron Balicki.
I'm so glad you brought up Ron's name. I think as time goes by, this new generation of coaches probably knew him when they were players, but there's going to be a generation come along before they had no contact with Ron, and that's sad. He was a great, great man.
Oh, he was. We would talk numerous times throughout the years, and he would run things by me, and he would pick my brain on who I thought the preseason All-Americans were, who I thought the season-ending All-Americans were. Same thing with teams and whatnot. But he had a wealth of knowledge that was unparalleled to anyone at the time. He really did the deepest of dives in the college golf and had a lot of sound bites on people and teams and everything that weren't shared. And if you sat down and had a beer with him and put your feet up, the conversations that were had with him were remarkable, fruitful, and just a lot of fun. And college golf, hats off to the GCAA for inducting him into their Hall of Fame. He really was the first and only one that championed college golf in its early years, and was really responsible for where college golf is today.
The cover of Golf Week magazine, you had the NCAA champion every year. He did more great feature stories on college and amateur golfers than anybody has before or since. So yeah, I agree with you. Ron really moved the game forward, the college game forward, and is responsible for a lot of the success we see today.
Yeah, and hats off to Steve Barkowski at the Golf Channel. He's really picked up the lead here the last 5-7 years, and the Golf Channel is doing a fabulous job. And but Ron's truly missed by a lot of people. So
yeah, let's that I agree completely. And Ron lived long enough to see, I think, 5 NCAA championships at match play. So let's talk a little bit about match play. A lot of people, there's 2 schools of thought on this. One, people that didn't like it at all, and then others that believe that one day we would be on television. And I think the excitement and the head-to-head nature that match play provides has really, really brought attention to our game.
Oh, there's no question. At the beginning, I wasn't really sold on match play for one reason only. Match play does not necessarily identify the best team or the best player, be it a match play, the U.S. Amateur. And 2, I think it diminished the individual championship. And because some of the leaders on the individual side of things, when you were not finishing on the same side as those teams competing for spots in the match play. And I know at Inverness at the Honors Golf Course. I'm trying to think. At Stillwater in 2000, was it 10 or 11 when John Peterson, Matt Hill, and Scott Langley all won the individual title by finishing on the opposite side as the leaders. And I didn't think that was fair. But at the end of the day, the focus was on the team championship. The match play format gave more teams an opportunity to compete for a national championship, and brought TV into the households of a lot more of people that couldn't be there, and helped grow the game. And I can't argue with it now. There's been a lot of excitement. I don't think the school, you don't have that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I just haven't felt that you've got that school versus school rah element that they were looking for. It hasn't gotten to that point yet where you have 300-400 people. Of course, when the NCAA championships was played at Oklahoma State, I mean, there was 4,000 or 5,000 people out there when Oklahoma State was playing at Augusta State in the semifinals. You don't have that parent, family, community support at some of the other venues where you might have the last year Texas versus Stanford in the finals. Obviously having the tournament in Arkansas probably prohibited people from Stanford getting there to support the school. And if there was, I always got the impression that the mindset was that you'll have hundreds of people from each school attending at the finals, supporting their school, and you'd hear the roar of the crowd and go from there. That's the only thing that I think is missing at this point in time.
Right. Well, I think that those people that would be screaming and yelling in the gallery are definitely watching it on television, though. So that's great. I love the fact that we are on TV. The Golf Channel, as you said, Steve Burkowski and the whole staff has just done an amazing job of making the championship very, very visible and important. And I know I watch it even when we're not there at match play. I'm watching it, so it's great. On that note, of the 11 or so NCAA championships at match play that you've seen, what are some of the highlights? I mean, you've got some that probably stand out.
Well, if I were to answer the question, which NCAA championships were my favorites, I go back into the 80s and start with the 1988 NCAA championship at North Ranch, where UCLA defeated Oklahoma State, OU, and UTEP. And my biggest takeaway there was the fact that Cricket Mush was the coach at UTEP, and they were only playing with 4 guys.
Yeah.
And they still finished tied for second. I thought that was one that I will always remember. In the 90s, the 1995 NCAAs at Ohio State, where Okie State beat Stanford in a playoff, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Leif Westerberg left to fly home to Sweden, and so Oklahoma State had to play with 4 players.
They did.
Yeah, and then 1996 at the Honors Course, Arizona State won the team championship. Tiger Woods won the individual championship. And what I think very few people knew, but this is something that Wally Goodwin told me at the time. Tiger had a big lead going in the final round, and he shot 80 or 81 in the finals. But Tiger gave a junior clinic the night after the 3rd round, and he did not get the sleep and rest that he would normally get, prior to a tournament round of golf. And Wally kind of dismissed it, but he just made mention to it in passing, and it may have had an effect on how Tiger played the last day. And then you move into the post-2000 real fond memories of the 2006 NCAAs at Sun River, which I think was your first year as head coach at Okie State, where you guys beat Florida and Jonathan Moore won the individual championship. I thought it was a great championship held on a wonderful venue.
Yeah, I have fond memories of that place too, Jim.
Yeah. And then you get into the match play era. Obviously, 2009 Inverness, Texas A&M beating Arkansas. But I think it was really the opening round of match play where Oklahoma State was paired with Georgia, and you were 1 and 2 respectively ranked in the polls, but 1 and 8 in qualifying, and Brian Harmon beat Ricky Fowler on the 18th hole, and Georgia moved on, and the Cowboys went home. Crushing defeat for the Cowboys, but again, the nature of a match play. But I think throughout that course of that match, there was a lot of great golf played.
It really was. And
then I think the next couple are the NCAAs at Riviera in 2012, Texas over Alabama. Thomas Peters winning the individual battle, but that match went down to the 18th hole, and really exciting on the last day. What a venue for the NCAA's Riviera Country Club. Mm-hmm. Then my next one would be one that hits home close to you, is 2014 in Prairie Dunes, Alabama over Oklahoma State, and you were the J.C. Wells assistant coach at that time, and you were out there working hard in the last couple of matches, and I was watching you, but some great golf coming down the home stretch by the Crimson Tide. So,
well, I would say Robbie Shelton and Zach Olson from Oklahoma State and Robbie Shelton from Alabama played. They had 22 threes in their match, and Robbie shot 63 and Zach shot 64. Pretty good match.
Yep, that was. And the last one I think that was memorable for me was 2016 at Eugene Country Club, Oregon over Texas. I thought it was just a great venue for both men and women. I liked the setup of the golf course. It forced players to think of what they were going to do off the tee, and so it was not about brute strength and length off the tee. You had it tested your shot making ability and your decision making. Not to take anything away from 2017, 18, and 19, all greats, but those are the ones that really stuck out to me when I kind of went down memory lane.
How many years did you attend consecutively? Did you miss a year in there anywhere?
I did. I missed 2003 at NCAA's. I got sick and I was hospitalized for a day the week before the championship, and I was grounded. So it was a tough one to meet, to miss. What was it? Clemson won, and Alejandro Canizares won the individual championship, if memory serves me correctly.
That is correct. That is correct. Well, that's pretty good to go down that memory lane. Not very many people have that experience and having been to all those. So thank you for that. Another question for you. This spring, we've played some college golf this fall due to COVID. And I know you haven't been around it, but I think it was done very successfully. So what are you thinking about this spring? I know you do watch college golf nonetheless. You're still following it. So what are you hoping for this spring for college golf?
I'm hoping for the same thing many other people are hoping. You can get back to some sense of normalcy. You guys can play the same tournament schedules that you have on the books right now, if you will, or something similar to what you've been playing in years past. The GCAA and the SEC and Big 12 have done a nice job of putting together tournaments, giving players an opportunity to play. But the ACC and Pac-12 their players have been kind of dormant. I looked at the field for the Azalea Amateur that finished up this past weekend and did not see a lot of ACC players in the field. And I think it's been unfortunate for those players. So I hope that college golf can get back to as close to a normal spring schedule as we've seen it in years past. Obviously, that's up to the state and local guidelines that are in place. I hope that spectators are going to be allowed to come to the events, and that you have, if the 500 rule is still in effect, everybody has an equal opportunity to get to regionals as they have in the past, with conference championships and playing a full schedule. That's my hope, and obviously to have a successful NCAA championship, not only Division I, but Division II, Division III, and NAIA. I think everybody's just hoping to God that we can move back in that direction, and that's my hope for you guys as well.
So. Well, I know you won't be at those tournaments, but your spirit and your memory is there for a lot of us college coaches and players, and so we wish you the best. But I want to ask you a couple of questions. We're going to have a speed round here to end on, so I'm going to have a bunch of questions you've got to zip through. But before I do that, tell everybody you're working on your golf game again, Jim. I've heard that you've actually got your handicap down.
You're right. Rumors are floating out, but I kind of neglected my golf game for 25, 30 years, and having retired and whatnot, I've been able to work on my golf game, and I try to play or practice 3 to 4 times a week. I'm still on my same fitness routine as I had while I was working, probably a little bit more rigorous now, but my handicap's down to 4.6, and I have the senior amateur in sight in the next year or two. So as long as my health is good and I maintain my flexibility, I'm going to give it a shot. So I'm pretty happy of the progress. I've made. I'm glad the USGA changed the rule on double hits, because I'm still capable of double hitting a chip shot. So, but I'm working on that part of my game. And
all right. Well, I'm just glad you're playing again. I hope to one day join you and start playing golf a little bit more as well. So, well, before we finish, before we do the speed round, I just want to say thanks for coming and sharing. Certainly for sharing all that history you gave us, because a lot of people didn't know all of that. But just to say, just to spend an hour talking and just chatting, it's been great catching up, Jim.
Well, thanks for giving me this opportunity. I can't tell you how much I miss the people, you coaches, the players, parents, NCAA, USGA officials. I miss that daily, weekly interaction via whether it be text messages or emails or phone calls. So, like I said in my email to many of you, I'm not going away. This whole amateur golf is part of my DNA, and I'm going to try to get out to some tournaments this spring, depending on the rules of the respective tournaments. So I hope to catch up with many of you this spring and chat it up and get caught up. So
perfect. Well, we look forward to that for sure. All right, you ready for this speed round?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, if you had to go back in time, would you play the Tour Balada or the Professional?
Professional.
All right. You can watch only one sporting event: New England Patriots in a Super Bowl or the Boston Red Sox in Game 7.
Patriots in Super Bowl.
All right. Favorite golf course in the world that you've ever been to?
I have 2. I can't settle on one.
2's good.
Royal Melbourne, the composite course in in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
where they've played the President's Cup and Australia Open, and Augusta National.
Oh, good, nice. All right, you and I have eaten maybe 40 meals together through the years. So I'm going to ask you, Ruth's Chris or Morton's Steakhouse?
Morton Steakhouse.
All right. Caddyshack or Tin Cup?
Caddyshack.
All right.
Day in and day out. So.
Favorite tournament to watch in person?
Probably the Masters.
Okay. Dream foursome, you and 3 others. Who are they? They can be dead or alive, Jim.
I'm going to get sentimental here. Ron Balicki, Randy Line, and yourself.
Oh, wow. Gosh, you're going to bring me out of retirement to play golf with you. I love it. All right.
Yeah.
How many holes in one have you witnessed while walking these fairways? Do you know?
3.
3. All right. Favorite Coach McGraw quirk, and this is your last question.
Favorite quirk?
Apparently, my assistant coach, Mikkel, thinks I have a lot of quirks. So here you go.
I don't think you have any quirks.
Thank you, Jim. God, I've been waiting for somebody to answer that. Thank you so much.
No, I don't think you have any quirks. You love ice cream.
Okay.
He's made up of quirks. What do you mean, Jim? All he is a bunch of quirks.
Well, look, if there was one quirk, and it would be your ability to eat fast.
Okay. Well, you're not the first person to mention that, so that's good.
Yeah, but yeah, you enjoy ice cream, and you've learned to appreciate a good glass of red wine.
There you go. I love it. Well, Jim, again, this has been a pleasure. It reminded me how much we miss you, but also I'm glad to hear that you might show up at some tournaments. So maybe we'll see you sometime this spring.
Well, plan on it. I'm not going to give you any advance notice. I'm just going to show up, and I might be in a Tommy Bahama shirt and shorts and flip flops. You never know.
Okay. Well, it'll be good to see you. But thanks again for joining us today, and maybe we'll catch up again sometime in the next year or so.
No, you bet. Absolutely.